Hello, it is the 12th of July 2020 and I think that makes it the 8th Sunday of Stash Dash. We're fairly getting through it, although there's still over a month to go until the end of Stash Dash. And I said last week that I hoped that I would have less of a headachy weekend this weekend because I had a few days off last week, and that is the case, although I started getting a headache for the first time this weekend about half an hour ago, so that was helpful, but I don't feel too bad. Unfortunately, I haven't finished as many things or made as much progress as I really thought that I might, and I'm not really sure why, although one of the reasons is that the one finished object I do have, I was actually not as far along with it as I thought I was. So I have finished my Trondra hat by Emily Williams, also known as Flutterby Knits, and this hat is quite an unusual construction. You knit the colourwork tube all the way up, and then you continue knitting and you knit a lining, which I did in black lace weight, knit the lining to the same length and then do a 3 needle bind off with the outer and inner bits, and then you knit the rib and then a lining and then tack that inside. And what it does mean is that you actually are knitting just a tube. The hat's not completely closed up, but you twist the lining when you go to join it, and in essence you end up with this as your crown. Maybe slightly neater than that. I hope I'm not giving away too much. It is a paid for pattern, but those are the basics of the construction anyway. And yeah, the lining being in lace weight did take me quite a while to knit, so yes, I finished it literally about half an hour ago. Even the tacking down the lining of the brim took a wee while. Now, I did not do a gauge swatch, and you might be able to tell because the rib is clearly flaring out a little bit. I did go down a needle size, or 2 needle sizes I think, as the pattern suggests, but yeah. That's not going to be the bit that keeps it on your head, and on me it is slightly enormous. But I have to say, especially over sort of this part of my head, it does not feel loose. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall off my head at all, even though this is kind of loose, which is actually quite nice, because often I find that, you know, because the brim clings to your forehead, it can be a bit itchy or irritating. And yeah, actually I kind of like that, although I'm not sure it looks entirely sensible. I haven't obviously blocked this yet, and I'm not going to be doing any widthways stretching, but I might try and get a little bit of extra length, because in quite a lot of the pattern photos this bit is a lot more floppy, and so I would like to think that that might just drape a little bit more, because I think it does look a little bit ridiculous on me. However, I was knitting this really because it's got a Stitch Mastery chart and it's one that I've quite admired, but in terms of the actual yarn that I've used in the project, I wasn't knitting it specifically for me to have, because as with so many other knitters I've got a million hats, so I might just put this in a collection for the homeless, or to raise money for charity, or gift it to somebody. So I'm never worried when things don't turn out the exact size to fit me if it's not something that I knit specifically with me in mind. So occasionally socks and definitely garments I tend to knit specifically for me, but things like hats and mittens and things, I can always find a home for them if they don't come out the right size for me. So obviously it would be easier just to swatch, but anyway, I don't mind. So it's so cozy though. It's actually just like having, oh, it's delightful. It's so thick between the colour work in Jimison. It's Jimison and Smith 2-ply jumper weight for the yellow, and the grey is Rauma lamel garn, I think, the lamb's wool, which I think is slightly lighter weight than the yellow, but it's fairly similar. And then the lace weight is Navia, I think, so it's all woolly and it is very, very cozy. And I think even despite the fact that, I mean, this, I can poke my finger in, but I don't feel like you're really going to feel the wind coming in with that. I have seen some people wearing this hat on Ravelry with ponytails and having the ponytail coming out of the hat, but it does feel like it would be very cosy even despite it not being a traditional closed up crown. So yeah, maybe it needs to be a gift to somebody who lives somewhere very cold or is outside in the wind a lot, because it feels like it wouldn't be it would be quite windproof, I think. Anyway, take that off. My hair now be a complete state. Yes, that's my only finished object. I have one whip this week. So as I mentioned, my knitting progress didn't have quite this burst of activity that I was hoping for. I've done a lot of housework. I spent Thursday pretty much socialising all day, a mixture of online and in person, which was lovely. But yeah, I don't seem to have actually achieved very much on the knitting and crafting front. But I do have a cast on since last week. I don't think I'd cast this on by last week's episode, vlog, whatever you want to call this, video. But I have cast on the Parslow hat by Carrie Westerman, and so far I've just come past the brim, which does have this cable detail right from the start, and we're just starting to get into a larger motif. And I'm knitting this with the Country Mile DK yarn from Garter Stitch Farm, which is a blend of Shetland and Soy, I think. Certainly there's Soy in there. I'm pretty sure it's Shetland and Soy. Did they have a crowdfunder for this, a Kickstarter? Or did I just buy it? I can't remember. I think I got the mug in their Kickstarter. I don't remember. Anyway, I got the yarn. It's lovely. It's I said this on social media. It's very spongy, which is a really odd word to use, but there's just something. It's so plump, and I really like it. It's quite entertaining because I think it was spun at Uist. I might be wrong, and it's so sheepy, which I love. I love that it's not been overly processed, so there's quite a lot of veg matter and so on in this as you're knitting. And I just, because I follow Kat and Kevin on Instagram and have seen all the adventures and misadventures their sheep get up to, it just makes me laugh every time I find a bit, because I'm just like, this was when that sheep escaped again. I'm not entirely sure if it's the best choice of yarn for this pattern yet. We'll see once the bigger motif starts coming through whether the stitch definition is going to be enough. It might not be the best choice. I might end up ripping this back and choosing a different project for the yarn and a different yarn for the design. The hat has Stitch Mastery charts, and I always liked it, but it was one that Carrie released. I think it was a support, a reward for people who supported her crowdfunder for her book, I think, which I don't think I really knew Carrie at that point, or maybe I wasn't feeling particularly flush at the time that was going on. But she re-released it as an individual pattern, or made it available as an individual pattern last year, I think. So that's been on my list for a wee while, and I definitely, if this doesn't work out, I'll definitely knit it again in something else. And I'm not sure what. I've only got the one skein of this, so I'll have to come up with something different if I think that the design's not going to work very well. But I just love this. It's, yeah, I just really like it. Just gonna sit and smile at my yarn for a little while. So, but yeah, as I say, my other whips at the moment have not seen huge amount of progress since last week. I'm not sure that I've even worked on my Islington since last week, and I've certainly not worked on Clear very much either, but there's time yet. I think I'm going to aim to finish this next if it finish or frog. And then I'm not sure which of the shawls I'll concentrate on next. As I mentioned a week or two ago, I do enjoy having a one finished object every week of Stash Dash, so I'm not sure what my next finished object is going to be. There might be a week where I don't have a finished object, but that's okay. And finally, I wanted to just say a brief word. Anybody who follows me on Instagram will know about this. I'm not sure if I've mentioned anything on Facebook, but 3.5 weeks ago, Ravelry unveiled a new look for the website, and unfortunately, a lot of the changes have caused quite a lot of people to have various unpleasant reactions, some of which are quite serious medical well, they're all medical reactions. I'm not talking about people disliking it, but a number of things to do around accessibility for reading and it not being compatible with screen readers, I think. But also a lot of people reporting migraines, eye strain, seizures in some cases, and even a retinal bleed, which sounds absolutely horrific and really not what you expect from a website, especially not one that's been designed by a team which have, to all intents and purposes, portrayed themselves as being very inclusive in the past. Now, I have gone and had a little look at what Ravelry states about themselves, and actually in some places they don't use the word inclusive, and it does make me wonder how much we project our morals and our core values onto the people that we like and the organisations that we like, and whether there's actually a basis for that. Now, obviously, if you follow Ravelry or use Ravelry, you'll be aware that they are very forward looking in some senses for certain types of oppression. So they took a stand against pro-Trump support on the website last year. In June, they gave a large donation to the Black Lives Matter appeals, not the right word, but cause, I think, to various organisations. And they are obviously very LGBTQ plus friendly and inclusive. But it seems, given their reaction or their lack of reaction to the concerns that people have raised, it doesn't seem like they're particularly concerned about disabled people and people with medical conditions that are being affected by this change. Now, they have made the classic version of Ravelry available to opt back into, but you have to go through the website to do that, so that's not an option for some people. And pretty much all of their response has been on Ravelry. They've made one or two posts on social media platforms, but not particularly well thought out or particularly thorough responses, and certainly not responses that make me feel that they are committed to making changes quickly so that people can continue to use the website safely. And some of the things that they've been doing to approach it, so they've had various surveys going on, and some of those have contained screen grabs, including parts of the website that have caused people problems, so including drop shadows under boxes and buttons, which for some people is a real big no-no. And you just have to wonder why you would not pay attention to the feedback about this before you set up a survey to gather people's feedback if you're concerned that people are being really badly affected by your website, if that makes sense. You know, people were saying drop shadows bad, and yet they've put it into this 35-page long survey, and they're just making a massive hash of it. And to be completely blunt, I mean, I can completely empathise with them that it is horrific when you do something that, you know, you put tons of work into something and then it just doesn't work and it reveals all sorts of problems you hadn't considered. I mean, I've been in various situations, not to this extent, but where things have gone wrong that you didn't anticipate, and it's absolutely gutting. I mean, it's just soul destroying. But you've got to do better. You've got to make a proper effort at fixing it. It's not just that people dislike it, it's that people are having massive unexpected reactions which don't just affect them in the sense that, oh, they can't use Ravelry anymore. You know, people have had to take time off work. They've found that they can't look at their computer screens for days on end afterwards, which means that in a lot of cases they can't do their work. They can't interact with other parts of their community, and we're in a pandemic, so lots of us are not able to go and see people or interact with people in any other way than through a screen. So it's really, really not good. And I can understand other people getting annoyed at a lot of reaction in the really short term, because obviously it will take time to make some changes, although really what I think they should have done is to put everybody back to classic Ravelry and then give people a drop down option to opt into the new version while they sort these problems. Because remember, it's not just people who want to buy patterns that are affected. There are disabled designers and designers with different visual conditions, with seizure-related conditions, or who suffer from migraines too. And those people are trying to make their living from this website, and they have been able to do that successfully. I mean, I realise not many people are making a huge living from it, but in the past this has been a really good platform for them, and now they're in some cases completely unable to use it. And a lot of people have said, oh, but Ravelry's a free website. Well, yes, you can join it for free, but if you buy patterns, you're contributing to Ravelry. They do take a cut beyond a certain point. And also a lot of their advertising revenue comes from yarn producers, designers, tech editors, teachers, and so on. Most of the advertising on Ravelry, if not all, is paid for by people in the yarny community. They don't take advertising from big companies. You know, you don't get crap spam adverts for things that nobody needs. You know, there's no Viagra adverts on Ravelry. So their money comes from the knitting community. They're not making their money from elsewhere and we're benefiting from that. We are paying for Ravelry. So I would really like to see improvements made quickly. I didn't finish an earlier point. So I understand that making a lot of changes is not something they can do overnight, and especially if they clearly have got a lot of learning to do to understand what needs to be done on a website. It seems that past versions of Ravelry, it's by accident that they've been accessible. It's not through specific decisions that the team have made when building it to make it accessible. So they clearly have a lot of learning to do to understand what needs to be done. And I'm sure a lot of us are the same. I've been involved with website, not background development, but putting stuff together on websites, basically, the forward facing stuff. And I have to admit, I have never read up what's helpful to any great extent. There are certain things that I understand and know about. So for instance, obviously in Instagram, using the alt text, but also putting a image description within your caption, so that people who don't use a screen reader but do have visual processing problems have a better chance of understanding what your post is about. And also using capital letters in hashtags, which helps screen readers to read them out sensibly, and also helps anybody who's reading them to see what the different words are if you've got multiple words in a hashtag. And there's a few other things that I'm aware of, but there's a lot that I'm not aware of. But I am not setting up a website that is for a massive community. And if I was in that position and a lot of people came back to me and said, actually, this is really not good, I would be taking no time in making sure that I did whatever I could to get that fixed, basically, because it's just the right thing to do. And yeah, so I can understand people being a bit like, oh, you know, you have to give them a chance to sort it in the first week or two. But this is 3.5 weeks and they have really not come up with a very good apology and commitment and reassurance that they mean to do better. So yeah, I'm really not impressed, and the longer it goes on, the less confidence I have in them, to borrow a phrase from Louise from Woolwork. It doesn't feel like a good place, and it's not somewhere that I really want to spend money. Obviously, there might still be designers that are not in a position to put their patterns onto other platforms. You know, if they're doing it as a sideline and in this time of a pandemic, they maybe have extra issues to be looking after in their own lives. I mean, excellent timing to just, you know, have a massive upheaval of your website. Not really sure about that, but I do understand that the pandemic does make us think about what things could be different. Not sure this was the best time though. So I'm not saying that I will not buy patterns on Ravelry again at all, but if there's an alternative option, I will certainly be looking to that alternative option and buying on a different platform, because I don't really think that Ravelry deserves to be getting my money at the moment. Now, back to people saying, oh, but it's a free website, you know, we use this for free and they're a small team. Well, they're doing well enough that they managed to match donations on, I think, $13,000 to Black Lives Matter in June, which is fantastic. I mean, I absolutely do not think that they shouldn't have done that. I think that's absolutely fantastic, but I think we need to have the perspective that this is not just, you know, a hobby for a couple of people. You know, this is a team that are full-time working on a website, and it's not even that the website is the side part of what they do. They do the website. You know, the websites that I'm involved in, for the most part, are for projects that bring people together in person and do music with them. The website is a necessary bit, but it's a side factor to the main thing. Ravelry, the website, is the thing. So if they can't get the website right, I mean, the website is their job. That's what they're doing. So yeah, I could ramble on a lot more about this, but I am going to stop there because I seem to be losing my voice. I haven't spoken to anybody since Thursday, so it seems to be showing. But anyway, next week we'll see if I have any finished objects, any progress on other things. I hope there will be a little bit. And I'm going to round up there, and I hope you all have a very crafty, healthy, safe week until I speak to you next time. Bye.